The rush begins the moment you drop the weights on the floor with a heavy thud. You can feel the clock ticking in your mind, a phantom countdown that suggests your hard-earned effort is evaporating with every passing second of rest. You hurry toward the locker room, your chest still heaving, your fingers fumbling with the plastic lid of a shaker bottle. You try to mix your protein powder with frantic speed, hoping to consume it before the 30-minute mark expires. This is the ritual of the anabolic window, a belief so deeply ingrained in the culture of the gym that it has become an unwritten law for millions of people. You have likely spent years treating this post-workout period with a sense of religious urgency, fearing that a delay of even 10 or 15 minutes might result in the tragic loss of muscle mass or a completely failed recovery cycle. However, for the trainee over the age of 40, this frantic behavior is a hollow pursuit. The golden hour, as it was once called by coaches and supplement companies alike, has become a psychological prison that distracts you from the true, deeper mechanisms of human growth. To understand why this myth persists with such tenacity, we must look at its historical origins. The concept of the 30-minute anabolic window was largely born from early sports science studies conducted several decades ago. Many of those studies were performed on young, elite athletes who were training in a severely fasted state, often after not eating for 12 to 16 hours. In those specific extreme conditions, the human body is indeed desperate for nutrients, and the immediate intake of protein and carbohydrates can have a measurable impact. But you are not a fasted 20-year-old athlete with the hormonal profile of a teenager. You are a motivated, experienced individual navigating the physiological landscape of your 40s and beyond. For the aging trainee, the biological response to resistance exercise is not a sudden, fleeting spark that disappears if it is not caught in a bottle. Instead, it is a slow, deliberate, and highly sophisticated process. By obsessing over the immediate post-workout rush, you are fundamentally ignoring the reality of your own biology, which operates on a much longer and more stable timeline. As your scientist friend and guide, I have observed countless dedicated individuals stall in their progress despite following this locker room advice to the letter. You do the heavy work, you drink the expensive shakes, and yet the results in the mirror seem to plateau or even regress. This happens because the urgency of the 30-minute window is being applied to a body that requires precision and consistency over raw speed. We need to shift our collective perspective away from the idea of a momentary flash of opportunity and toward the revolutionary concept of the 48-hour synthesis arc. Muscle building is not an event that happens while you are sitting on a wooden locker room bench in your gym clothes. It is a complex cellular symphony that plays out over 2 full days following your final repetition. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. This transition from a mindset of urgency to a mindset of precision is the absolute key to breaking through what scientists call anabolic resistance. When you are over the age of 40, your muscle tissues do not respond to the same signals with the same youthful intensity they once did. The cellular machinery requires a different kind of communication, one that is sustained rather than rushed. The old way of thinking tells you that you are a simple machine that needs fuel immediately after use, like a car pulling into a gas station. The new biological truth reveals that you are a dynamic biological system that initiates a long-term repair sequence every time you challenge your muscles. This sequence involves the activation of specific signaling pathways that stay elevated for 24 to 48 hours after you leave the gym. If you spend all of your mental and physical energy worrying about the first 30 minutes, you completely miss the opportunity to optimize the thousands of minutes that follow. The frantic rush for protein often leads to a sharp spike in cortisol, the primary stress hormone that can actually blunt the very signals for growth you worked so hard to trigger. By treating the end of your workout as a nutritional emergency, you are inadvertently telling your body that it is under threat rather than in a state of peaceful rebuilding. We are going to deconstruct this myth piece by piece. We are going to look past the plastic shaker bottle and deep into the microscopic cellular landscape where the real work of transformation happens. It is time to stop being a slave to the ticking clock and start being a master of your own unique physiology. The death of the golden hour is not a loss of opportunity. It is an invitation to a much more intelligent and effective way of training, We are preparing to look directly into the master regulator of this entire growth process, a sophisticated protein sensor known as mTORC1. This is where the true architecture of your strength and vitality is designed, far away from the noise and the outdated myths of the locker room. Your journey into the 48-hour arc begins right now. The cellular landscape is dominated by a master regulator that acts as the primary gatekeeper for muscle growth. This molecule is known as the mammalian target of rapamycin complex 1, or simply mTORC1. Think of it not as a simple light switch that you flip on with a single meal, but as a sophisticated biological computer. This computer is constantly scanning your internal environment, looking for specific data points before it gives the green light for muscle protein synthesis. It checks for the presence of mechanical tension from your workout, the availability of cellular energy in the form of adenosine triphosphate, and most importantly, the concentration of specific amino acids in your bloodstream. For the trainee who has passed the age of 40, this sensor becomes the most important player in the entire muscle building equation. This is the bridge to the creation of new tissue. As you age, a phenomenon known as anabolic resistance begins to take hold within your muscle fibers. This is a reality where your body becomes less responsive to the anabolic stimuli that worked effortlessly in your 20s. In your younger years, even a small amount of protein was enough to spark a significant growth response. The mTORC1 sensor was highly sensitive, reacting to the slightest whisper of a signal. However, after 4 decades of life, that sensitivity begins to dim. Your muscles essentially become hard of hearing. They require a much louder, more distinct signal to initiate the same level of repair and growth. This is why many people in their 40s feel like they are working twice as hard for half the results. They are still using the same quiet whispers of nutrition that worked in the past, but the cellular machinery is no longer listening to those cues. To overcome this resistance, we must understand the leucine threshold. Leucine is one of the 3 branched-chain amino acids, and it serves a special function within the human body. While other amino acids are used primarily as building blocks to create new tissue, leucine acts as a direct signaling molecule. It is the specific chemical key that fits into the lock of the mTORC1 complex. For the aging trainee, consuming 20 grams of generic protein is often not enough to reach this critical threshold. To shout loud enough for an aging muscle to hear, you must provide 3 to 4 grams of leucine in one sitting. This is a quantitative requirement that dictates whether the machinery for muscle protein synthesis is turned on, or if it remains in a dormant, maintenance-only state. Without hitting this specific chemical mark, your protein intake might help with health, but it will do little to drive hypertrophy. You are essentially providing the materials without ever giving the order to build. This is where the quality of your nutrition becomes more important than the speed at which you consume it. We are no longer looking at protein as just fuel. We are looking at it as biological information. The sensitivity of your receptors has changed, meaning your nutritional strategy must become more calculated and deliberate. You cannot rely on the haphazard snacks or low-quality meal replacements that might have sufficed a decade ago. Every time you eat, you are attempting to trigger a massive cellular response that is naturally trying to resist you. This requires a high concentration of quality amino acids that can flood the system and overwhelm the resistance of the mTORC1 sensor. By understanding this qualitative shift, you move from the frustration of a plateau into a state of physiological mastery, where you are providing exactly what the aging body needs to thrive. You stop guessing and start calculating, ensuring every meal serves as a powerful signal for growth. It is vital to distinguish that leucine's role here is not just about being a substrate for tissue. Imagine you are building a house. Most amino acids are the bricks in the wood, but leucine is the foreman who arrives on the job site and gives the order to start construction. If the foreman never shows up, the bricks just sit on the lawn, and no progress is made. In the 48-hour arc, your goal is to ensure that the foreman is present and active multiple times throughout the synthesis cycle. This shifts the focus from a single post-workout shake to a sustained strategy of high leucine pulses. You are effectively keeping the construction site active for as long as possible, ensuring that the signal for growth remains loud and clear long after the workout. You are extending the window of opportunity from a few frantic minutes to several days of consistent, high-quality progress. While the activation of mTORCONY provides the initial command to grow, the actual heavy lifting of physical repair is handled by a specialized crew of myogenic stem cells. These are known as satellite cells. They sit quietly on the periphery of your muscle fibers, waiting for the signal to jump into action. Once the mTORCONY gatekeeper has been successfully bypassed and the anabolic signal has been broadcast, these satellite cells begin a remarkable journey of activation and fusion. We are moving away from the initial signal and toward the actual physical reconstruction of your body. The signal is the blueprint, but the satellite cells are the workers who will actually expand the structure of your muscles. This leads us deeper into the timeline of the 48-hour arc, where the true work of recovery begins to take a physical, tangible form. The bridge has been built, and now the workers are ready to cross it, beginning the process of turning your effort into permanent strength and long-term vitality as the synthesis cycle moves into its most productive phase. The process of muscle growth is often misunderstood as something that happens while you are lifting or immediately after you drop the heavy weights on the floor. But for the aging trainee over 40, the most profound changes occur when you feel the most vulnerable. We need to redefine what fatigue actually means to the human body. That deep, lingering soreness you feel 36 hours after a heavy training session is not a sign of weakness or a signal that your body is failing you. In the context of the 48-hour arc, that soreness is actually the peak of your biological productivity and progress. It is the physical manifestation of a construction site operating at full capacity. While you might feel slow or stiff, your internal cellular environment is buzzing with the most intense activity of the entire synthesis cycle. This is the precise moment when the blueprint created by mTORCONY is finally being translated into new, physical structure. At the heart of this reconstruction are the satellite cells. These myogenic stem cells act as a reserve force waiting on the sidelines of your muscle fibers. They possess the unique ability to donate their nuclei to existing fibers. Because your muscle cells are some of the largest in the body, they require multiple nuclei to manage protein synthesis and repair. As you age, your existing nuclei become overwhelmed by the demands of training. This is where satellite cells come in. They are triggered by mechanical tension and specific hormonal signals. They multiply through proliferation and perform the ultimate sacrifice. They fuse with your existing muscle fibers, donating genetic material to expand the fiber's capacity for growth. This is the only way a muscle fiber can truly increase its size and strength over the long term. Without this donation of nuclei, the muscle fiber hits a ceiling it cannot cross. The kinetic timeline of this process is a slow and deliberate journey that requires immense patience. It does not happen in the 30 minutes following your last set. In fact, for the first 12 hours after training, your body is mostly occupied with managing inflammation and clearing out the debris created by microscopic damage. This is a period of relative silence and complex biological preparation. The real work begins in earnest between 24 and 48 hours post-exercise. This is the kinetic peak where satellite cell proliferation reaches its maximum velocity. During this specific window, the cells are actively migrating to the sites of damage and beginning the delicate process of fusion. This is a high-energy, high-precision operation that requires the body to be in a state of relative calm and nutritional abundance. If you view your body as a machine, this is the phase where the most critical hardware upgrades are being installed. There is a significant danger in rushing this process. Many dedicated trainees believe that if some exercise is good, more must be better. They return to the gym for another high-intensity session before the first 48-hour arc has completed its cycle. For the aging trainee, this is a recipe for stalled progress and frustration. When you introduce new, intense mechanical tension, while your satellite cells are in the middle of the fusion process, you essentially disrupt the delicate work being done. It is like painting a house during a storm. The premature stress forces the body to abandon the long-term project of building new tissue in favor of immediate survival and damage control. You end up in a cycle of constant repair without ever reaching the phase of actual growth. You are spinning your wheels, creating more damage than your satellite cells can keep up with. This is the primary reason why many people in their 40s stop seeing gains despite their hard work. Understanding the connection between your effort and your recovery means learning to respect the silence of the first day and the deep work of the second day. Your body does not scream when it is building. It whispers. The first 12 hours might feel like a period of stagnation, but that is simply the calm before the biological storm. By the time you reach the 36-hour mark, the synthesis of new protein is at its absolute height. This is why the precision of your nutrition and rest during day 2 are just as important as the workout itself. The 48-hour arc teaches us that muscle is not built in the gym, but in the quiet, deliberate moments of the 2 days that follow. The worker cells have been called, and the foundation is now being set for your future strength. This intimate bond between exertion and stillness is what separates those who plateau from those who continue to evolve well into their 50s and 60s. To protect this foundation, we must look at the environment in which these cells operate. While the physical workers are active, they are entirely dependent on the chemical signals circulating through your veins, specifically the balance between the hormones that drive growth and those that govern stress. While the satellite cells are busy donating their genetic material, they do not work in a vacuum. They are influenced by a chemical atmosphere that fluctuates every hour of your life. For the trainee who has crossed the threshold of 40, this internal atmosphere is governed by a delicate balancing act between two powerful forces, cortisol and testosterone. If the mTOR cone signal is the green light for growth, then the ratio between these two hormones determines how wide the gate stays open. The traditional locker room myth tells you to focus on the intensity of the lift, but the hormones circulating while you sleep and eat are the true masters of your physiological progress. Cortisol is often cast as the villain in the story of muscle building. It is a necessary hormone for mobilizing energy during a workout. The trap for aging athletes is chronic hormone elevation after the gym. When you rush out of the weight room, obsessing over that 30-minute window, you are inadvertently extending the stress response. Persistent cortisol acts as a direct antagonist to the mTOR cone signal. It blunts the body's ability to synthesize new protein by signaling to the nervous system that the environment is too unstable for cellular expansion. For someone over 40, whose hormonal resilience is naturally lower, this persistent stress signal can shut down the anabolic process entirely, leaving those hard-working satellite cells stranded on the sidelines with no instructions to follow. On the other side of the scale is testosterone. We often view this hormone as a fixed fate, but in the context of the 48-hour arc, testosterone is a dynamic variable that responds to how you pace your recovery. It acts as the primary counterbalance to cortisol, promoting an environment where tissues can repair and grow. Maximizing your natural hormonal ceiling requires the intentional lowering of stress. When you allow your body to transition out of the fight-or-flight state and into a calm, parasympathetic state, the ratio shifts in your favor. This chemical shift allows the circulating testosterone to do its job, protecting the new proteins being built and ensuring that the high metabolic cost of muscle growth is covered by your body's internal resources. A third, often misunderstood player in this hormonal dance is insulin. Insulin's role in the 48-hour arc is far more permissive than glucose management. During this extended window of synthesis, your muscle cells become sensitive to insulin's signal. It facilitates the uptake of amino acids for your recovery. When your cortisol levels are managed and your body feels safe, insulin works as a master key, opening the doors of the muscle fiber to allow nutrients to flow in. For the trainee over 40, maintaining this insulin sensitivity through smart carbohydrate timing and stress management is critical. It ensures that the leucine threshold can be reached at the cellular level, rather than having those nutrients circulate in the bloodstream. To optimize this chemical environment, we must embrace the concept of low dopamine recovery. With digital stimulation, our brains are stuck in high arousal. This dopamine seeking keeps the nervous system on edge, which in turn keeps cortisol levels higher than they should be during the critical 36-hour mark of the arc. True recovery requires more than just sitting on a couch. It requires a conscious effort to induce a state of physiological peace. This means slow walks, deep breathing, or stillness. By lowering the noise, you allow the signals of testosterone and insulin to become louder. You are clearing the air so that the cellular machinery can hear the instructions for growth without the interference of stress. As we master this hormonal equilibrium, we see the body as a sophisticated landscape to be cultivated, The focus shifts from the chemical environment to the physical architecture that performs the work. Even with the ratio of hormones and a surplus of nutrients, there is one bottleneck that can stall your progress. This bottleneck exists at the foundation of the cell's ability to manufacture protein. To understand why your gains might still be slow, even with perfect hormonal balance, we must look deeper than the signals and the workers. We must look at the factories themselves, the ribosomes, and how their density determines the ceiling of your evolution. The chemical environment is now prepared, and the signals are clear. Yet we must confront a fundamental truth about our biology that many choose to ignore. Even with the perfect hormonal balance and a surplus of nutrients, there is an invisible bottleneck that governs how much muscle you can actually build. This ceiling is not defined by how much weight you lift or how many grams of protein you consume. Instead, it is dictated by the density of your cellular machinery. We call this process ribosomal biogenesis. To understand your progress after 40, you must look past the muscles you see in the mirror and focus on the microscopic factories known as ribosomes. These structures are the true engines of protein synthesis. They are the sites where the genetic instructions from your DNA are translated into physical strands of muscle tissue. If your muscle cells are a construction site, the ribosomes are the specialized tools and heavy machines required to do the job. You can hire all the workers in the world and deliver endless supplies of raw materials, but if you only have one hammer and one saw, the project will move at a crawl. This is the reality for many aging trainees. They focus entirely on the fuel while neglecting the factories. I have watched you in the gym, pushing your limits, and wondering why the scale and the measurements stay the same despite your discipline. The reason often lies in this hidden structural limit. The process of building these factories is what truly separates long-term growth from temporary fluctuations. Ribosomal biogenesis is an energetically expensive endeavor. It is perhaps the most resource-intensive task a cell can ever undertake. This is where the health of your mitochondria comes into play. These bean-shaped organelles are the power plants of your cells, responsible for generating adenosine triphosphate, or ATP. Every single link in a chain of new muscle protein requires a significant investment of energy. If your mitochondria are sluggish or damaged due to age and poor lifestyle choices, the Mter cone signal will remain muted. Your body is far too intelligent to begin a massive construction project if it does not have the power to sustain the daily operations. For the trainee over 40, mitochondrial health is the silent partner of muscle growth. It is the reason why metabolic health and aerobic capacity are not just for endurance athletes, but are essential foundations for anyone seeking to increase their physical strength. Furthermore, we must reframe how we view our nutrition during this middle phase of life, specifically the role of carbohydrates. In the traditional locker room narrative, carbohydrates are often seen simply as a source of fuel for the workout itself. However, within the 48-hour arc, glycogen replenishment takes on a much more sophisticated role. Glycogen acts as a primary signal for cellular hydration and energy status. When your muscle cells are well stocked with glycogen, they send a signal of abundance to the ribosomes. This state of cellular swelling and high energy availability provides the necessary environment for the expensive work of ribosomal biogenesis to occur. When you are chronically low on glycogen or perpetually dieting, you are effectively telling your cellular machinery that resources are scarce. In response, the cell will prioritize survival over the creation of new protein factories, effectively lowering your ceiling for growth. As we age, the rate at which we can produce new ribosomes naturally begins to decline. This is one of the most significant biological constraints of the trainee over 40. It means that the machinery you do have must be protected and optimized with extreme care. This reality changes how we must view training volume and recovery frequency. Younger lifters can often get away with excessive volume because their bodies can rapidly build new factories to handle the stress. For you, the focus must shift from doing more work to doing more effective work. High-intensity training that causes extreme damage can actually be counterproductive if it forces the cell to divert all its energy into repair rather than the biogenesis of new machinery. You are looking to stimulate the creation of more factories, not just to fix the ones that are broken by overtraining. The biological truth is that muscle growth is limited by the machinery you build. not just the fuel you provide. Once you accept this, the frantic search for a magic supplement or a secret exercise routine begins to fade away. You start to see your body as a complex system that requires the right energy status and the right signals to expand its capacity. You realize that your stalled progress was likely not a lack of effort, but a failure to respect the bottleneck of ribosomal density. By focusing on mitochondrial health, glycogen status, and the timing of your recovery, you are slowly increasing the number of factories in your cells. You are raising the ceiling of what is possible. This perspective moves us from the chemical environment into the practical application of this knowledge. We have explored the signals, the repair crews, the hormones, and the factories. Now, it is time to assemble these pieces into a definitive blueprint. We must look at how to structure your life across that critical 48-hour arc to ensure that every signal is heard and every factory is working at its capacity. Knowing that your cellular factories are finite and your hormonal balance is delicate, we must now construct a new protocol that honors this biological reality. The old ritual of the 30-minute post-workout shake was a simple answer to a complex question, and it is time to leave it behind. In its place, we install a pulsatile protein strategy that covers the entire 48-hour synthesis arc. Instead of overwhelming your system with a single massive dose of amino acids immediately after your final set, you must think in terms of waves. Your goal is to keep the leucine levels above that critical threshold at least 3 to 5 times over the next 2 days. Each high leucine meal needs 3 to 4 grams of leucine to trigger the mTOR sensor and remind the cell that the construction project is active. By spreading your protein intake, you ensure that as your satellite cells begin their migration, they always have a steady supply of signaling molecules. However, constant feeding is not the answer, and this is where many trainees over 40 lose their way. Between these training arcs, there is profound value in leveraging periods of lower calorie intake or strategic fasting. This is not about weight loss in the traditional sense, but about cellular house cleaning or autophagy. For the aging body, the accumulation of cellular debris and damaged proteins can interfere with mTOR signaling and blunt the response to new stimuli. By allowing for windows of digestive rest on your non-training days, you clear the way for the next anabolic signal to be heard more clearly. This balance between the fed anabolic state and the fasted recovery state ensures that your insulin sensitivity remains high, allowing insulin to perform its secondary role as a powerful promoter of amino acid uptake when you finally do return to the gym. The physical structure of your workouts must also evolve to match this 48-hour kinetic timeline. If the goal is to trigger satellite cell activation without overwhelming your repair capacity, then mechanical tension must be prioritized over sheer metabolic fatigue. You are no longer looking to chase the burn until your muscles are completely depleted. Instead, you are looking for that specific threshold of tension that signals the need for structural adaptation. For the aging body, this often means fewer sets with higher quality execution and more rest between those sets. You are training to signal the repair crew, not to tire them out through exhaustion. When you respect the recovery kinetics of your 40-plus body, you stop seeing progress as a linear result of how much pain you can endure and start seeing it as a response to the precision of the stimulus you provide. I have watched the way you used to train, pushing for that one extra rep that eventually led to a lingering joint pain rather than a gain in muscle size. Perhaps the most overlooked component of this new blueprint is the shift toward a low dopamine recovery state. In our modern world, we are often perpetually stimulated by screens, stress, and the frantic pace of daily life. This constant state of high alert keeps cortisol elevated and keeps your body in a sympathetic, fight or flight mode. This is the antithesis of anabolism. To truly optimize your cortisol to testosterone ratio, you must intentionally induce a parasympathetic state following your training. By lowering the sensory input and quieting the mind, you create the calm internal environment that allows the hormonal balance to tip back toward growth. You are signaling to your biology that the danger has passed and that it is safe to invest energy into building new tissue. When we integrate these pieces, the 48-hour arc becomes a masterpiece of biological engineering. It starts with the mechanical tension that wakes the gatekeeper, mTOR. This is followed by a deliberate sequence of high leucine meals that sustain the signal over the first 24 and then the next 24 hours. Simultaneously, you manage your stress to keep cortisol low and testosterone high, allowing your satellite cells to move into position and begin the deep work of donating nuclei to your muscle fibers. You are no longer fighting against the clock of a 30-minute window. You are moving with the rhythm of a 48-hour arc, turning your recovery into a deliberate act of creation. This transition from external effort to internal alignment is where the true transformation occurs. You have moved past the hype and into the precision of science. And now, you are ready to see your body not as a machine to be forced, but as a living system to be nurtured. As you step away from the gym floor and into the rhythm of your daily life, the transformation you have undergone is not just physical, but intellectual. You have begun to see your body as a biological entity that must be wooed with precision. From an evolutionary perspective, muscle tissue is an expensive luxury. Your body, shaped by millions of years of scarcity, prioritizes survival over the size of your chest. It does not want to build more muscle unless it is absolutely convinced that it is necessary. This is why the 30-minute window was always a flawed concept. Biology does not move at the speed of a stopwatch. It moves at the slow, deliberate speed of chemical reactions and cellular transcription. To succeed after 40, you must understand that you are negotiating with a very conservative internal landlord. Every new gram of muscle requires constant energy. By respecting the 48-hour arc, you provide the persistent evidence your body needs to authorize that investment. You prove that the mechanical stress was a deliberate signal for growth. This is the true wisdom of the arc, a conversation between your lifestyle and your genetics. You have learned to speak the language of mTORC1 and leucine, moving away from the incoherent shouting of the locker room myths that once dominated your younger years. The scientist friend within you recognizes that you now possess a biological truth most people will never understand. They rush toward their shaker bottles with frantic urgency, fueled by anxiety that their work will evaporate without immediate protein. You, however, can afford to be patient. You have the intelligence to look past the marketing hype and see the cellular machinery. You understand that the deep soreness you feel 36 hours later is the beautiful sound of the satellite cell repair crew arriving at the job site. This knowledge brings profound relief. The burden of the anabolic window is gone, replaced by the precision of a multi-day strategy. Maturity is required to embrace this cycle. In a world obsessed with 30-minute hacks, choosing the 48-hour path is an act of defiance. It requires you to trust the process even when you cannot see it happening. You are no longer looking for a momentary flash of progress, but a steady, sustainable expansion of your physical capacity. This patience is your greatest asset. It allows you to avoid the injuries that come from rushing and the mental burnout that comes from chasing shadows. You are finally moving with the grain of your biology rather than fighting against it every single day. This shift changes everything. You are no longer the harsh commander trying to force a stubborn subordinate into compliance. Instead, you have become a partner. You are the provider of the signals, the nutrients, and the environment that allows your body to thrive. When you view your body as a sophisticated system waiting for the right signal, training becomes joyful. It is no longer about breaking yourself down, but about building yourself up. You nurture the system, and in response, the system rewards you with strength and resilience. The final realization is that the strength you seek is a byproduct of the biological peace you cultivate. When cortisol is low and your factories are running efficiently, growth becomes the natural outcome. It is not an act of force, but an act of alignment. You have moved from frantic effort to calculated response. The 30-minute window is dead, and in its place, you have found harmony with your own physiology. You are no longer chasing ghosts or following the outdated advice of those who do not understand your biology. As you move forward into this new chapter of your training, remember that your body is not a machine to be broken or ignored. It is a masterpiece of evolution, a complex network of internal builders waiting for your wise guidance. Listen to the quiet signals of your cells and trust their timing. Respect the long arc of synthesis that defines your growth. Building muscle after 40 is not a battle to be won through aggression. but a relationship to be cultivated with care. By listening to the biological truth, you have finally found the path to the lasting progress you deserve. Building muscle after 40 is not an act of force, but an act of listening.